titled How White Women's Investment in Slavery Has Shaped America Today. Now, I read similar articles, How White Women's Investment in Slavery Has Shaped America Today. They refer to this beautiful sister and scholar that I love so much in terms of her book, that is historian, excuse me, Stephanie Jones Rogers. You all have heard me refer to her in her book before. Stephanie Jones Rogers. It says, as a historian, she notes that there was one thing they could do, just as white men. Who are we talking about? White women. I know some of y'all be like, Vicky, you be going deep sometimes. Yes, this is a space not only for intelligent black people, but spiritually intelligent black people. And I need us to have receipts, and I need us to have a proper context so that you'll understand why Step and Fetch Stephen Jackson so deserves this work. Our beautiful historian Stephanie Jones Rogers notes that there was one thing that white women could do, just like white men. When they trying to act like they the victims and they done benefited from all of slavery, all of white supremacy at every turn, she said they could do something that white men could do. Guess what that was? They could buy, sell, and own enslaved people. Step and fetch! We're summoning your funny looking self to court. Stephanie Jones Rogers says, what? There was one thing white women could do that white men could do. What was that, Stephanie? They could buy, sell, and own enslaved people. By the way, family, her book is called They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. Get it? They were her property. That's the name of the book. They were her property. White women as slave owners in the American South. Jones Rogers makes the case that white women were far from passive bystanders in the business of slavery, as previous historians have argued. Rather, they were active participants, shoring up their own economic power through ownership of the enslaved. Jones Rogers, I'm skipping, an associate professor of history at the University of California, Berkeley, drew on a different source. She used interviews with formerly enslaved people conducted during the Great Depression as part of the Federal Writers Project, an arm of the Works Progress Administration. These interviews, Jones Rogers writes, shows that white girls were trained in slave ownership, discipline, and mastery, sometimes from birth. Even being given enslaved people as gifts when they were as young as 9 months old. We're talking about white women. The result was a deep investment by white women in slavery, and its echoes continue to be felt today. Let me skip. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Everybody else, thumbs up, share, share, share. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Somebody put 40 in the chat and tell Stephen Jackson's funny looking self to come to court real quick. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Somebody put 40 in the chat. Why, Vicky? Why, Vicky? Our sister, this is because I've done thorough research on our sister before, and I've read excerpts from her book to you all before and articles from her before. Watch this. White women during a particular census that Stephanie, I shouldn't just call her Stephanie, Professor Stephanie Jones Rogers studied a 10-year census. With this 10-year census that she studied, she found that white women owned 40% of those enslaved at the time. 40% of this particular census 10-year period that she studied, white women owned 40%. Guess what else she let us know? We found out through our sister, Professor Jones Rogers, Stephanie Jones Rogers. Again, in her book, they were her property. White women and slave owners in the American South. Guess what else they revealed? They revealed that white women was even willing to go to court to make sure they maintained the ownership of those slaves, even when she was married. She also breaks down the fact that it was white women, in many cases, that set up, listen, both the white man and black enslaved men to rape black women. I said our sister, Professor Stephanie Jones Rogers, breaks down in her book, They Were Her Property, White Women and Slave Owners in the American South. She breaks down for us that it was white women that helped to orchestrate the white woman being raped, in other words, not only by white men, but she said they set it up to where black enslaved men raped black women, and the white woman set up the encounters. She also went further in the book to break down many more tidbits, historical tidbits, that debunk this notion that white women were somehow passive and chilling and just was thinking that their little husbands was barbaric, when in fact they benefited from every area of it. But in one instance where she studied a 10-year sentence, they owned 40% of those particular slaves in that particular region. Stephen Jackson sent his funny looking self. She deserved a job. There isn't one person in America outside of Native Blacks and foundational Black Americans that can say they quote unquote deserve anything, because they benefited off of our slavery, whether they were slave owners or not. They directly or indirectly benefited from it. I'm bringing this up to show that this notion that white people deserve the job, like Stephen Jackson rather said, is fake. They don't deserve anything that they've been given. I'm bringing up these historical points to show you how the reason why white folks are in the positions that they're in right now is because it's had a snowball effect since slavery. If you don't understand how I'm connecting these dots, then baby, I can't help your funny looking self. You are so close to whiteness and white institutions, and you are disconnected from the Black grassroots. That's us. You say stupid things. You have a sick love for white people. You get thrown off, and your instincts are wrong when it comes down to who you're supposed to support and what your tactics ought to be. It's messed up because you're not connected to us. When you're connected to the roots, you're not like a tumbleweed. The reason a tumbleweed is problematic and moves about is not just because of the wind blowing. The tumbleweed is a problem because the tumbleweed is not rooted. See, when y'all be with white people, when you have proximity to whiteness and you're not connected to the Black grassroots, you lose your mind. Your instincts are always off, and you always do the wrong thing in favor of white people.